everybody. President Trump saying he is looking to negotiate as we await a meeting at the White House with congressional leaders from both parties on border security as the shutdown continues. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith, live inside America's newsroom.
And I'm John Scott, in for Bill Hemmer.
Good morning
to you. The president inviting 8 lawmakers for a briefing in the White House Situation Room one day before Democrats take control of the House. They're expected to pass a bill to reopen the government without any funding for the wall, which the White House calls a non-starter.
President Trump tweeting, quote, border security and the wall thing and shutdown is not where Nancy Pelosi wanted to start her tenure as Speaker. Let's make a deal. All this amid escalating tensions at the border. U.S. officials say 150 migrants threw rocks at agents while trying to breach a fence in Tijuana. Authorities on the ground saying they had no choice but to use tear gas.
Our agents responded with the least amount of force they possibly could to protect themselves in the border and did actually secure the border in this area. One agent was hit square in the face with a rock. Luckily, he had his helmet and shield on and was not seriously injured. But the violence associated with this caravan just continues.
Rich Edson's reporting live from the White House for us this morning. Rich, good morning.
Good morning, Sandra. And the White House says the president has invited the top Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate to come here to the White House to discuss this. The meeting is expected, according to officials, to begin this afternoon in the Situation Room. The president says he wants billions of dollars for a border wall. Democrats say a wall is immoral and ineffective and refuse to give him that funding. The president spent most of the holiday here at the White House, except for a trip to the Middle East and Iraq. He's tweeting on this issue again. He says, quote, Mexico is paying for the wall through the new USMCA trade deal. Much of the wall has already been fully renovated or built. We've done a lot of work. $5.6 billion that House has approved is very little in comparison to the benefits of national security. Quick payback. Democrats say they have no idea how the trade deal would directly fund a border wall on the southern U.S. border. Officials say discussions were essentially frozen over the holiday season, that the White House did say that it offered Democrats a number lower than the $5 billion to fund a border wall that the president is demanding. Democrats say they're willing to move on border security, but have refused to approve any more money for a wall, Sandra.
All right, and now, Rich, we're hearing Democrats say that they will vote tomorrow to reopen the government.
Yeah, tomorrow the new Congress takes over, and that's one in which Democrats control the House. Democratic leaders say they will vote tomorrow on 2 bills. One would fund the agencies and departments that are closed through September 30th, except for the Department of Homeland Security. A second bill would fund DHS through February 8th, and that essentially allows for more negotiations on this issue. To that, the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, says, quote, Speaker-designate Nancy Pelosi released a plan that will not reopen the government because it fails to secure the border and puts the needs of other countries above the needs of our own citizens. The Pelosi plan is a non-starter because it does not fund our homeland security or keep American families safe from human trafficking, drugs, and crime. So without sign-off from the Republican-controlled Senate and the White House, that House-passed plan is essentially stuck. And by the way, with divided government taking over tomorrow, it seems like something that we can get used to, at least over the next couple of years. Sandra.
Rich Edson live at the White House this morning. Thank you.
For more on this, let's bring in Byron York, chief political correspondent at the Washington Examiner, also a Fox News contributor. So those 8 lawmakers are sitting down with the president in the Situation Room at the White House. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats plan to reopen or introduce a bill to reopen the government, but no funding for the wall. Where is that going to go?
Well, first of all, we're nowhere right now. Nothing happened over the Christmas-New Year holiday. The president stayed in Washington. He asked for negotiations. He reduced his demands, and Nancy Pelosi answered by going on vacation in Hawaii. So we're really nowhere right now. But it is actually time to begin negotiations, and I would look for some sort of semantic arguments to emerge. Do we pay for a wall? No. Do we pay for enhanced fencing? Well, maybe we can do that. Maybe there could be some additional money for enhanced fencing. So I do think that we will see actual negotiations take place and some money figure arrived on between the 2 parties.
And the president seems to be inviting that in his tweet this morning. He says, let's make a deal.
Absolutely. The president, even before the holiday, gave up on the word wall and said, look, if you can't call it a wall, let's call it steel slats. Let's call it something else. So polls have shown that when you call the border barrier various things, you get varying levels of support. And the word wall is most associated with President Trump, who does have a popularity job approval rating below 50%. So you get a lot of disapproval for it. So one thing that might emerge from these negotiations is some new description of this barrier that could be built along the border.
Let me take a look at some of the things that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats would like to run with when they take over the House. First of all, health care stabilization, infrastructure spending. They want to reform PAYGO. I'll get you to maybe explain that in a second. Also, gun safety legislation. They want to protect Robert Mueller's investigation with a bill. Some kind of permanent DREAM Act and immigration reform, and some kind of lobbying reform. Now, in there ought to be a way for the president to say, okay, you want all of these things, let's make a deal on the wall.
I think that there would be some sort of negotiations for that. And remember, any trade-off for a border barrier does not have to be one immigration policy thing in exchange for another immigration policy thing. As you suggested, there are a lot of agenda items that Democrats would like to pass that could be traded for some sort of border fence, enhanced fenced wall, whatever you want to call it. Although I think we should be cautious here. Remember back to 2011, 2015. Republicans had just won control of the House, but the Senate remained in Democratic hands, and President Obama, of course, was a Democrat. It's kind of the mirror image of the situation we have right now. And the new Republican majority in the House passed a lot of bills that went nowhere. So I think that we will probably see a lot of that with this new Democratic House and a Republican Senate and Republican president.
And the new Democratic House is more left. That the gang that Nancy Pelosi is leading is more liberal than the gang she last led when she was Speaker, isn't it?
Absolutely. And in politics, leaders tend to get in line with the followers. And in this case, you have 60-plus freshman Democrats coming in. You're absolutely right. They are more left than the previous class. And by the way, some of them actually defeated in primaries more centrist Democratic members. So Nancy Pelosi has adjusted her positions and become more and more progressive, and you're going to have to see Democratic leaders get in line basically with their new Democratic caucus.
She's going to have an interesting juggling act ahead of her. Byron York.
Absolutely.
Byron York. Thanks very much, Byron.
Thank you, John.
We'll have much more on the situation on the ground at the border with today's headliner, Robert Perez, Deputy Commissioner at Customs and Border Protection. Coming up.
A lot of questions about what we saw happen over the weekend in the last couple of days, so looking forward to having him on. Meanwhile, another big story that we're watching this morning, the illegal immigrant accused of shooting and killing a California police officer during a traffic stop makes his first court appearance today. Gustave Arriaga was arrested Friday as he was trying to flee Mexico. William LaJeunesse has more from our West Coast newsroom on this morning. William.
Well, Sandra, today we expect prosecutors to charge that Mexican national and illegal immigrant Gustavo Perez Arriaga with killing California police officer Ron Singh the day after Christmas. Police arrested the 33-year-old gang member Friday in Bakersfield, about 200 miles south of where he allegedly shot Officer Singh after the officer stopped him for possible drunk driving. Motive remains somewhat of a mystery since under California's sanctuary state law, police cannot call ICE for deportation on a drunk driving charge.
Law enforcement would have been prohibited from sharing any information with ICE about this criminal gang member.
Relatives for Arriaga, a farm worker, said they too were surprised at his arrest.
We had to double look at the pictures. We had to double look at everything because we didn't believe it. We didn't think it was him.
So I spoke to ICE. They have a detainer placed on Arriaga if for some reason he made bail, not likely, but they confirmed that California police never alerted ICE of his prior DUIs or active warrants. Sandra?
William, what about those accused of helping Arriaga try to escape and flee to Mexico?
Sure. 7 in total are charged with helping him escape, including 2 brothers, a co-worker, and a girlfriend who have been charged with lying to police about his whereabouts, and 3 others helping hide him in Bakersfield. Now, under California law, police are not allowed to ask a suspect their immigration status, or aiding and abetting are not deportable crimes. So, even though this is a high-profile case and the accomplices are being held in jail on a $100,000 bond, considered a flight risk because they're from Mexico and in the U.S. illegally, police are prohibited from telling ICE they're even in custody or cooperate with the feds upon their release, despite, of course, them helping a cop or help free a cop killer, if you will. No word, Sandra, from Governor Gavin Newsom or Senate President Kevin De Leon on defending the state sanctuary law and the sheriff's claim that this crime could have been prevented if not for that law. Back to you.
We'll watch for developments on that story today. William Lajeunesse, thank you.
And moments ago, President Trump firing back at Mitt Romney after the senator-elect starts his new tenure by slamming the sitting president in a scathing op-ed. We'll get reaction from incoming Senator Marsha Blackburn next.
Plus, rescuers working to free a baby from the rubble of a deadly building collapse. That dramatic footage and how the baby is doing today. We'll have that next.
Also, we are learning more about the American detained in Russia on spying charges. We'll tell you what his family has to say.
I'm sure my brother's not a spy. I just can't imagine him getting sideways of the law in Russia or doing anything anywhere close to breaking an espionage act.
A New Year's miracle in Russia, where a little baby was rescued from the rubble of a collapsed apartment building. The 11-month-old boy found under the debris after first responders heard him crying. Authorities say a suspected gas leak in the building caused the explosion. The infant was flown to Moscow Children's Hospital, where he's in serious but stable condition. First responders think he survived the sub-freezing temperatures because he was in a carrier and wrapped in a blanket when they found him. 21 bodies have been pulled from the rubble of that building. About 24 people remain unaccounted for.
Senator-elect Mitt Romney has not been sworn in yet, but he's already attacking the president. The Utah Republican writing a critical op-ed in the Washington Post. In it, he writes, quote, "The president has not risen to the mantle of the office." In response, the president has tweeted, "Here we go with Mitt Romney, but so fast, and not so fast, question will be, is he a flake? I hope not. Would much prefer that Mitt focus on border security and so many other things where he can be helpful. I won big and he did not. He should be happy for all Republicans. Be a team player and win." Let's bring in the senator-elect from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn. Thank you for joining us this morning. Happy New Year to you.
You too.
Goodness, is this a sign of what's to come in the new year, in the new Congress?
Sandra, let me tell you something. There is an acronym for the word team, and it's something my mom used with me when we were growing up. Together, everyone achieves more. And what Tennesseans are looking at is a president who has delivered on turning the economy around, promise kept. He has delivered on moving the embassy from Jerusalem to Jerusalem. And he has delivered when it comes to working, defeating ISIS, dealing with China, dealing with trade, getting us back on the road to economic prosperity. And Tennesseans want to see more of that action. And I'll tell you something else they want to see is that border secured.
Clearly, you're seeing the president's team is not impressed by what they have seen here. And Brad Parscale, the president's campaign manager, fired back before we even saw a response from the president. And he wrote, quote, "The truth is Mitt Romney lacked the ability to save this nation. Donald Trump has saved it. Jealousy is a drink best served warm, and Romney just proved it. So sad. I wish everyone had the courage that real Donald Trump had." This was in response to the piece that Mitt Romney penned. In it, he writes this: "With the nation so divided, resentful, and angry, presidential leadership in qualities of character is indispensable, and it is in this province where the incumbent shortfall has been most glaring." To that you say what?
I say, as an elected official and as someone Tennesseans has sent to Washington, D.C. to represent them, they are saying, look, Marcia, do everything that you possibly can do to help keep this nation free and to keep it prosperous. And that is what they want to see me focus on, and that is what I am going to be focusing on. We need to make certain that everything we do, I call it the big five, Sandra: faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity. And every day my focus is on how do you defend and protect faith, family, freedom, hope, and opportunity, and how do I help this president, this administration, and my colleagues do the best to make certain we hand freedom on free, prosperous, and vital to the next generation.
Based on that, what do you hope to see happen at this meeting at the White House this afternoon? Here we are, day 12 of this government shutdown. What happens?
I have to tell you, when it comes to the government shutdown, what you will hear people say is the president has made an offer, and it is up to the Democrat leadership to come to the table and exercise something on that offer. I was in the produce aisle at the grocery store, and a constituent, this guy came past me. He said, Marcia, I'm a veteran. I am an independent voter. Build the wall. Our citizenship is not for the taking. It is for the earning. And there are so many Tennesseans, Sandra, that feel that same way, that this is precious, and they want to make certain that our sovereignty is preserved, that our country is secure, that we're dealing with the drug traffickers and the sex traffickers and the gangs that are trying to come across that border, and they're saying, secure it. I had somebody else yesterday at the airport when I was coming to D.C., and they said, what is all this about non-essential employees? Why do we have them if they're not essential? Let's secure our government. Let's secure our border. Let's get this job done. I think they support the president.
What do you want to see the president do today? It looked like there was room for negotiation on his part. There was a very firm statement put out by Sarah Sanders on where the president and his administration stand here. So what do you want to see happen in that room? It's expected that there will be 8 members of both parties, leaders from the House and the Senate, that gather at the White House today to meet with the president. What do you want to see the president do? Final thought.
You know, going into this, realize the Democrats have all voted for border security and a border wall in the past. They're not doing it now because they do not want to give President Trump a win. It is time to stop that. The American people want to see our nation and our border secured. And what I hope they go into that meeting room with is open minds and a willingness to do what is going to be best for the American people.
Well, the country will certainly be watching. It's all expected to happen this afternoon as everyone starts to return to Washington. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
The former New York Times executive editor, Jill Abramson, comes out swinging against the Gray Lady in her new book. Why she says her former employer is acting more and more like the Trump opposition party.
And President Trump says he is open to another summit with Kim Jong-un. What the North Korean dictator is now saying. That's next.
And a trip to a Florida zoo turns terrifying for a family after a 2-year-old girl is injured when she falls into a rhino pit.
It's simply a matter of just respecting the instructions for the keepers. There was only 3 people involved in the encounter: the mother, the father, and the child, and 2 keepers were there at them at all times.
The Florida Zoo, a 2-year-old girl injured after falling into a rhino pit at the Brevard Zoo in Melbourne yesterday. She was in her father's arms when she stumbled back and fell between the bars of the exhibit. Officials say she was rescued and rushed to the hospital within 4 minutes.
2 of the female rhinos turned. We think at least one made contact with her snout with the child. They pulled the child out, and the child was crying and had a small abrasion on her face.
The unidentified little girl is said to be doing well, and her mother was also treated and released from the hospital for a minor injury she sustained after jumping in to pull her daughter to safety. Whoa. Close call. She's going to be all right.
Yeah, and luckily the rhinos were well fed there and not too aggressive.
What a story.
Well, North Korea's leader has a New Year's message for the United States. In a televised address, Kim Jong-un says he's willing to meet with President Trump anytime and take a new path regarding nuclear weapons. But he says the U.S. must ease sanctions. Senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott has more. Any reaction so far, Greg?
Well, John, it seems like there is a mix of good and bad news coming from Kim Jong-un in this New Year's address, according to the analysts in North Korea who we speak with. The good news in that cozy fireside-style speech is, yes, he wants to meet with President Trump again following last June's Singapore summit. And it's seen as crucial, for the first time he's saying that North Korea is not, at the moment at least, building nuclear weapons. It's thought they have something like 20 bombs in their arsenal. The bad news is, however, more or repeated Kim demands, including easing sanctions, ending permanently U.S. military exercises, as well as maneuvers in the region. He says he's getting impatient and might choose an unspecified second path. In that tweet, President Trump chose to accent the positive from the address. He said, and I quote, Kim Jong-un says North Korea will not make or test nuclear weapons or give them to others, and he is ready to meet President Trump anytime. I also look forward to meeting with Chairman Kim, who realizes as well that North Korea possesses a great economic potential. A lot of Kim's address, by the way, John, was dealing with the shaky North Korean economy.
So we could see another meeting, it sounds like. Where do negotiations go between the states and North Korea in the year ahead?
Yeah, still a lot of questions, John. Yes, we could see another summit, maybe in the next couple of months. It seems like it's the only thing that works. North Korea has nixed in the last couple of months meetings between its officials and Secretary of State Pompeo, as well as the new U.S. North Korean envoy. And some analysts say the U.S. could pick up on this new Kim line and simply pursue a cap on the number of nuclear weapons it possesses. But that goes against everything the Trump administration is working on for the last couple of years. So that sounds like a non-starter, too. A lot of questions. Back to you, John.
And the sanctions remain. Greg Palcott. Greg, thank you.
Well, we are just moments away now from the market open. First day of trading of the new year set to get underway just moments from now. And the Dow, not looking so good. It's shaping up to be a sell-off on the open. We'll have that for you.
Plus, the Pentagon officially under new leadership this morning. Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan reporting for duty early this morning. We are live from Washington with the latest.
Plus, will the president and lawmakers make a deal to end this shutdown? Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz is up next on that.
People who just want to say wall, 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 want it to be a four-letter word and not respect what Customs and Border Patrol and ICE tell us they need, which is enhancements at the border.
A Fox News alert, all eyes on Wall Street as the stock market kicks off its first day of trading in 2019. And so far, Sandra, not looking so good. Down 327 points right now.
Ouch. 2 minutes into trading, brand new start to the year. And a lot of folks on Wall Street were hoping we could kind of say goodbye to the wild ride on Wall Street that we saw the last few weeks. But here we are down more than 300 points, which has a lot of talk about a possibility of a bear market, which means, John, as you probably know, a drop of 20% from the market's recent highs. The NASDAQ is already there since this market territory. Latest note from FBN this morning, you'd have to see the Dow fall over 1,000 points. Over 1,800 points to be down into that bear market territory. So we're not there yet. It's still about 8% above those bear market levels, but below 23,000 now. A lot of folks are talking about concern on Wall Street, and that translating to concern on Main Street.
But still up, what, 5,000 points over where the markets were when the president
since election day, yeah.
So, yeah, pick your half empty or half full.
So we'll see. It's the first 3 minutes of 2019. We'll give it a break here and let it breathe and see where the day takes us. Meanwhile, President Trump inviting congressional leaders from both parties to the White House this afternoon to talk border security. It is the first meeting between President Trump and Democrats since a standoff over wall funding sparked a partial government shutdown. House Majority Whip Steve Scalise accusing Democrats of, quote, playing games with America's safety. He penned a FoxNews.com opinion piece, and in it he wrote, quote, from the day President Trump took office, Democrats have vowed to oppose him at every turn in an effort to appease their radical left base, putting the politics of obstruction over the security of our country. There's been no better example of that than the current partial government shutdown. Joining us now is Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who serves on the Judiciary Committee. Good morning to you. So what are your expectations for this meeting today, and how much would you like to see the president negotiate?
I know that the president is negotiating on behalf of the regular folks in this country who want safe streets, who want rising wages, and who want to know that we've got a nation of laws and respecting our border. My hope is that the nature of that negotiation will take the form of the framework that Senator Lindsey Graham laid out, where we could get $5 billion for a physical barrier, we could enhance other elements of border security, and perhaps we can weave in elements of a TPS solution for people who are here from oftentimes war-torn countries, and maybe even the Bridge Act that doesn't provide amnesty or a path to citizenship for those impacted by DACA decisions, but would provide some temporary sense of stability while we get that worked out. So again, I think that Senator Graham is sort of the Henry Clay over there in the Senate right now, and I'm hopeful that he's able to stitch this together.
Well, it sounds like you are hopeful, but what we heard in response to Nancy Pelosi laying out a plan to end this shutdown, the White House via Sarah Sanders put out a statement calling that pitch a non-starter. And you sort of got the indication from the president that he was going to sit down and negotiate with Democrats today in the White House. What is your sense that the president is willing to meet Democrats on some of these issues?
The president's willing to negotiate. I had lunch with him at the White House a couple weeks ago, and he lamented the fact that Democrats were leaving town, that they weren't rolling up their sleeves and staying to work out some of these issues. He authorized the vice president to make offers that would have been compromise on behalf of the president. But what the president's not willing to compromise on are the outcomes. I think he's willing to negotiate inputs, whether it's more or less wall, more or less fencing or slats or drones or technology. What he's not going to compromise on is the safety of the American family or the protection of the American economy that's needed by ensuring that we don't just have flows and flows of illegal immigration with no ability to manage or ensure that it is economically beneficial to American citizens. So look, I know who the president is negotiating for. I don't really know who Democrats are negotiating for.
Let me get in Nancy
are they really
Pelosi's
negotiating for illegal immigrants?
Here's Nancy Pelosi. While the president drags the nation into hashtag Trump shutdown week 2 and sits in the White House and tweets without offering any plan that can pass both chambers of Congress, Democrats are taking action to lead our country out of this mess. Your response?
Well, let's see what that looks like in terms of border security. During the final days of Republican control of the House of Representatives, we passed a plan that would have kept the government open and would have prioritized the safety, security, and economic well-being of American citizens. So if Nancy and Pelosi and Democrats really believe in border security, if they want to make sure that we are a nation of laws, I'm eager to see their plan. But I do think that there is room here to do the wall, do border security, and then provide some temporary sense of stability for DACA recipients, for those who are here as a consequence of the TPS program. And I don't know what Democrats find objectionable about that. I mean, do they really think that physical barriers don't help? 95% of border security say that a physical barrier would help them.
That's a conversation that's going to happen at the White House this afternoon. Last question to you as we begin the new year. What happens with the Russia investigations in the new year with now Democrats controlling the House? Where does this go?
I don't think any of us would have suspected that we'd be 2 years into the Donald Trump presidency, and all we will have seen from Robert Mueller is some ghost indictments of some Russians and some guilty pleas to some process crimes. So my hope is that if there's some sort of evidence that that's laid bare before the American people and we don't continue to have just sort of a lack of understanding as to what's going on. I've seen no evidence of collusion or obstruction of justice. It seems to me the investigation has migrated into other elements of President Trump's life, and I don't really think the American people signed up for that.
I just want to finish up with this tweet here from the president's legal team. I challenge Mueller to put up or shut up. You have no evidence of the president being involved in a conspiracy with anyone, including Russia, to hack. And you also have no evidence of collusion. It's been 2 years, so submit a report to DOJ, and we will answer it. That is the final words that we've heard from the president's legal team on that matter. Congressman Gaetz, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Sandra.
Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan arriving at the Pentagon for his first day on the job. Jim Mattis officially hands over control of the armed forces to Shanahan at 11 on New Year's Eve. Lucas Tomlinson is live now at the Pentagon with more. So when did Patrick Shanahan arrive this morning, Lucas?
John Shanahan arrived bright and early and reported for duty 2 hours before sunrise, arriving here at the Pentagon's river entrance at about 5:50 a.m. Eastern Time. It's the first public appearance for the new acting defense secretary.
Priority number one. Job done. Take care.
Jim Mattis transferred power to his former deputy over the phone. There was no ceremony. In his first message to the forces, the longtime Boeing executive wrote, "As acting Secretary of Defense, I now look forward to working with President Trump to carry out his vision alongside strong leaders." Now, there won't be much time for on-the-job training. A looming withdrawal of all U.S. forces from Syria is in the months ahead. John?
Yeah, and on Syria, Lucas, it looks like the president has extended his deadline to pull out. Is that true?
It is true, John. The president has given the military up to 4 more months to complete its withdrawal from Syria. The president spoke to Fox News moments before the ball dropped on 2019.
I never said that I'm going to rush out. We're going to get out. We're getting out of Syria. We're bringing our young, great troops home after so many years.
On a visit to Brazil's capital for the inauguration of its new president, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. would continue to work closely with Israel to counter Iran, even after all 2,000 U.S. troops are out.
The decision the president made on Syria in no way changes anything that this administration is working on alongside Israel.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, departs for Turkey in the coming days alongside John Bolton. They will be discussing Syria and the next steps ahead. John?
Lucas Tomlinson, a lot of changes for you to cover there at the Pentagon. Thank you.
Well, the 130th Rose Parade made its way through Pasadena Tuesday, but not without a hitch. A float briefly broke down and caught fire, causing a backup. It was towed from the parade route. An electrical problem caused the fire, we're told. No one was injured. Meantime, Urban Meyer ended his coaching career at Ohio State with a victory in the...
Bring a pregame photo op. The 1,700-pound steer broke through a barrier and charged the English Bulldog. We're happy to report, though, that no animals were actually hurt. As for the game, Texas upset Georgia, defeating them.
At the Fiesta Bowl, however, LSU snapping Central Florida's 25-game winning streak with a 40-32 victory. Congratulations to LSU.
Congratulations to you.
Yes.
Your school, right?
Very happy.
All right. An investigation is underway after at least 6 passengers became violently ill on a domestic flight. What might have caused the problem on a Frontier Airlines plane?
Plus, a former top executive at the New York Times taking the paper to task over its coverage of President Trump. Her pointed criticism coming up.